Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're exploring a seriously fascinating intersection. We're looking at our everyday eating habits and how they crash right into the absolute cutting edge of modern weight loss medicine. It's wild stuff.
Okay, let's dive right in. I want you to ask yourself a very simple yet, honestly, a surprisingly difficult question about your daily life. When was the last time you just ate? Seriously, not while you're scrolling your phone, not while driving to work, not while binge-watching a show. Just eating. Well, if you're struggling to remember, you are definitely not alone. According to resources from Brigham and Women's Hospital, a staggering 66% of Americans regularly eat dinner right in front of the television. We've kind of turned our meals into just another multitasking chore, right? Like dinner is just a side dish to whatever's on Netflix. But here's the thing. This distracted eating, it's not just a bad habit. It is actively sabotaging our biology. When our mind is completely tuned out, our digestive process actually drops in effectiveness by 30 to 40%. Your brain literally fails to register that you've even eaten, so it blocks those natural fullness signals, which leads to heavy bloating and discomfort. Not great. So, to combat all this mindless consumption, researchers are pointing us towards something called mindful eating. Basically, it's defined as bringing deliberate, non-judgmental attention to the physical, emotional, and sensory aspects of the eating experience. In everyday terms, it's entirely about being present for each sensation, without judging your habits or the food itself, just you and your meal. Now, a quick heads up here, because it's really important to distinguish mindful eating from intuitive eating in the clinical literature. You probably hear these terms thrown around interchangeably, but they are actually different. Mindful eating focuses strictly on the quality of your attention during the meal. Intuitive eating, on the other hand, well, that's a much broader framework that involves rejecting the whole diet mentality and practicing total body acceptance. So they're related, for sure, but our focus today is purely on the incredible power of your attention. And getting this distinction right is absolutely critical right now. Why? Because of a massive limitation in modern medicine. We have these revolutionary weight loss drugs today, like GLP-1 receptor agonists, and they are incredible at helping people lose weight. But the data shows patients regain an average of 9.69 kilograms when they stop taking the medication. I mean, almost 10 kilos. That is a massive metabolic rebound.
So, why does this happen? It all comes down to this concept called the behavior gap. As the literature puts it, pharmacotherapy effectively suppresses appetite through biological mechanisms, but it does not address the psychological and behavioral patterns that drive maladaptive eating behaviors in the first place. Think about it. The biology is suppressed by the drug, sure, but the underlying psychology, the emotional eating, the distracted eating, that remains completely unchanged.
And this is exactly where mindful eating steps in to bridge that behavior gap. It literally rewires the brain. The neurobiology here is absolutely fascinating. It boosts activity in your prefrontal cortex, which enhances your cognitive control and self-regulation. It modulates your dopamine reward pathways, effectively turning down your drive for highly palatable foods. And crucially, it lowers cortisol levels, which breaks that vicious stress eating cycle.
So how do we take all this brain science and actually build it into a scalable solution? Let's look at how clinicians are bridging this gap and integrating mindful behavior with modern medicine.
What you're seeing here brilliantly illustrates the MEPEM framework. That stands for the Mindful Eating Pharmacotherapy Integration Model. It's basically a three-phase roadmap showing exactly how mindful eating complements the biological effects of GLP-1 medications in a primary care setting. Let's break down these three specific phases so we can see exactly how they work together.
All right, starting with phase 1. The pre-pharmacotherapy phase. Here, clinicians introduce mindful eating as a first-line behavioral intervention. The whole goal is to establish a solid, vital behavioral foundation before any medication is ever introduced. Patients learn to actually feel hunger and fullness, and to recognize when they're eating emotionally. And the absolute best part? For some patients, building this foundation prevents the need to escalate to medication altogether. How amazing is that? Now, if medication is initiated, we move into phase 2, which is concurrent therapy. The drug goes to work suppressing that biological appetite. But rather than just sitting back, this creates a really unique window of opportunity. Because the patient isn't battling overwhelming gnawing hunger, it becomes so much easier for them to actively practice and adopt mindful eating techniques. They're building deep, transferable skills for their everyday life.
And finally, we hit phase 3, post-pharmacotherapy. Eventually, when the medication is stopped or tapered down, that artificial biological appetite suppression just goes away.
But instead of being left totally defenseless, the patient now relies on these newly acquired permanent psychological skills. Their heightened internal awareness and their ability to regulate emotions become their primary defense against that devastating 9.69 kilogram weight regain we talked about earlier.
Okay, all of this clinical neurobiology is great, but how do we actually bring this down to your dinner plate right now? Let's talk about putting it into practice. You can literally start today with something called the Apple exercise. This is a sensory anchoring technique recommended by Brigham and Women's Hospital, and it is incredibly powerful. Here's what you do. First, take one single bite of an apple. Close your eyes and do not chew. Just notice the texture in your mouth. Second, begin to chew slowly, and I mean really focus your complete attention on every tiny movement of your jaw. Third, notice that subtle transition in your mouth from chewing to swallowing. And finally, follow that swallow all the way down your throat until every sensation of the food is gone. Doing this for literally just the first bite of a meal completely shifts your intention and your awareness for the rest of your time at the table. Now, to master those internal cues beyond that very first bite, you can use the Mindful Eating Hunger Scale. It's super simple. It's a 1 to 10 scale where 1 means you're absolutely famished or faint, and 10 means you are sick and stuffed. The golden rule to remember here is to aim to be at a 4 before you start eating and a 7 when you finish. Starting your meal at a 4 protects you from that starvation-induced binging, and stopping at a 7 protects you from the uncomfortable overeating. It essentially trains you to truly listen to what your body is telling you.
And if you really want to lock these habits in, try the 7-Day Mindful Eating Challenge. It only takes about 15 to 30 minutes a day, focusing on just one specific meal. On day 1, you eat with absolutely 0 screens, none. Day 2, you actively slow down by putting your fork down between every single bite. Day 3 involves a quick 1-minute meditation before eating, just to drop your tension. And it builds from there. By the time you reach days 6 and 7, you're actively identifying your emotional triggers and coming up with non-food activities to handle them. It's just a brilliant structured way to systematically clear out distractions and relearn your body's true biological signals.
Which really leaves us with a fascinating and frankly a pretty provocative question to wrap up our explainer today. If the absolute most advanced, revolutionary weight loss drugs in modern medicine still completely rely on our state of mind to succeed in the long term, will our next great medical breakthrough simply be learning how to pay attention? Think about it. If the future of our health relies on bridging the gap between medicine and the mind, what will you pay attention to during your next meal?